single dad CEO's intern healed his daughter and saved his company. You can help us a lot by subscribing to our channel and sharing this video. I hope you enjoy this amazing story. The corner office on the 50th floor was Arthur Vance's sanctuary, a glass cage of power where he thrived on controlled chaos. He was pacing behind his mahogany desk, the $1,000 suit feeling like a straitjacket, his voice a low growl into his phone. "No, Peterson, that's not an option," Arthur said, his tone terse. "The quarterly projections are based on the acquisition going through this week. Make it happen." He ended the call just as his intercom buzzed, a harsh, insistent sound. Before he could respond, the door flew open. It was Clara Monroe, the intern, her usual calm demeanor replaced with a flush of alarm, her hazel eyes wide with concern. "Mr. Vance, I'm so sorry to barge in," she said, her voice slightly breathless. "There's been an emergency. It's Brenda. She collapsed at her desk. An ambulance just took her to the hospital." Arthur froze, the words hitting him like a physical blow. Brenda, his unshakable secretary of 15 years, was the bedrock of his daily operations. "Collapsed?" he managed to say, running a hand through his black hair, the silver at his temples suddenly more pronounced. "This cannot be happening. Not this week," he lamented, his mind racing through the catastrophic implications. Just then, his personal phone vibrated, a text from his nanny. "Emergency root canal. Can't pick up Lily." It was a perfect storm. He sank into his chair, the weight of it all pressing down on him. A moment later, the office door opened again, and a security guard gently guided in his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, who clutched her worn-out plush elephant. Her blue eyes, usually just sad, now looked lost in the cavernous office. Arthur looked at the mountain of work, the flashing lights on his phone, and his silent child. He was trapped. Seeing the despair on his face, Clara took a tentative step forward. "Mr. Vance, I know I'm just an intern, but I can help. I can handle Brenda's duties. I'm a fast learner, and I won't let you down. And I'm good with kids. Let me take care of Lily while I manage the schedule." Arthur looked up, skepticism warring with desperation in his eyes. He saw not just a nervous intern, but a young woman offering a lifeline with an expression of genuine resolve. He had no other choice. "Fine, Miss Monroe," he said, the word a surrender. "You're on. Just keep her occupied. I cannot have any distractions." "You won't," she promised. She turned her attention from the CEO to the small child lost in the shadow of the great desk. She walked over and knelt, bringing herself down to Lily's eye level. Her warm smile transformed the tense atmosphere. "Hi, Lily," she said softly. "I'm Clara. Your dad is very busy today, so you and I are going to be a team. How about we go set up our own special office right outside?" She held out her hand. Lily hesitated for a heartbeat, her blue eyes darting from Clara's kind face to the outstretched hand before she slowly placed her own small hand into it. Clara picked up a fresh legal pad and a pen from the corner of Arthur's desk. "Great," she said brightly. "First on our agenda, figuring out the best snacks for a very important meeting." As she led the little girl out of the room, Arthur watched them go, a complex mix of uncertainty and profound relief washing over him. The chaos hadn't vanished, but for the first time that day, it felt like it could be managed. Brenda's desk was an island of immaculate order just outside the storm of Arthur's office. It was large, made of dark cherry wood, and everything on it, from the pen holder to the monitor, was perfectly aligned. Clara surveyed the station, a command center she now had to pilot without a map. Beside her, Lily stood silently, her small hand still loosely held in Clara's, her eyes wide as she took in the new territory. Clara knew that a child's fear often came from feeling powerless, so she decided to give Lily power. "All right, partner," Clara said in a conspiratorial whisper, pulling out the grand leather chair. "This is our new headquarters. You get the very important job of Chief of Supplies." She opened a drawer filled with colorful paper clips, sticky notes, and highlighters. Your first mission is to sort these clips by color. It's crucial for office efficiency. Lily looked at the pile of colorful plastic and then back to Clara, a flicker of curiosity in her blue eyes. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod and climbed onto a spared chair Clara pulled up beside the main one. As her small fingers began to meticulously separate reds from blues, the main console beside Clara lit up with an incoming call. Clara took a deep breath, slipped on the headset, and answered with Brenda's polished professionalism. "Mr. Vance's office, this is Clara speaking," she said, her voice smooth and confident. A difficult client, Mr. Harrington, was on the line, known for his impatience. As Clara calmly navigated his demands, assuring him that a file he needed would be expedited, she wrote notes with one hand and with the other slid a yellow sticky note over to Lily. On it, she had drawn a simple smiling face. Lily stopped her sorting for a moment, her finger tracing the drawing. A few minutes later, Arthur emerged from his office, his brow furrowed as he headed for the coffee machine. He stopped dead in his tracks. The scene before him was one he could never have imagined. The notoriously difficult Harrington was being handled with a placid grace that even Brenda sometimes struggled with. And his daughter, his silent, withdrawn daughter, was sitting at the desk, not staring into space, but completely absorbed in a task, creating neat, colorful little piles of paper clips. She looked peaceful. He watched for a long moment, unseen. He saw Clara end the call, give Lily a thumbs up for her sorting progress, and then immediately begin organizing his chaotic digital calendar. She was a whirlwind of quiet efficiency and gentle empathy. The two worlds he fought so hard to keep separate, his ruthless business life and his fragile family life, were coexisting right here at this desk, orchestrated by an intern he'd barely noticed before today. Without a word, he retreated back into the silence of his office, the scowl on his face replaced by an expression of thoughtful surprise. The lifeline she had offered was proving to be stronger than he could have possibly anticipated. The afternoon sun bled through the massive windows, casting long shadows across the reception area. The frantic energy of the day had subsided, leaving a quiet hum. Inside his office, Arthur was on his final, grueling conference call. Outside, the chief of supplies had successfully sorted every paperclip and stacked every sticky note into a colorful tower. Now, a new challenge arose: boredom. Clara saw Lily's focus beginning to wane, her gaze drifting towards the silent, imposing door of her father's office. Clara knew she had to bridge the gap. She slid off her chair and sat on the plush carpet, creating a new, smaller world on the floor. "Okay, Mr. Patches," she said, picking up Lily's worn elephant and placing it carefully on a stack of papers. "Time for your performance review." She picked up a stapler, holding it to her ear like a phone. "Yes? Hello? Head office? I'm calling about Mr. Patches. His performance in comforting Lily has been exceptional." Lily watched, her expression unreadable. She didn't speak, but she mirrored Clara, picking up a tape dispenser and holding it to her own ear, her brow furrowed in concentration. Clara's heart swelled. It was the first time Lily had actively joined the game. Then, Clara noticed a small loose thread near the elephant's button eye. "Oh dear," Clara said with mock seriousness, examining the toy. "It seems our best employee has sustained an injury on the job. This requires immediate medical attention. Nurse, please prep for surgery." She laid the elephant down gently. Her surgical tools were a bent paperclip and a small piece of clear tape. With the delicate precision of a surgeon, she carefully tucked the thread back into the seam and secured it with the tape. "There," she whispered, handing the elephant back to Lily, her small fingers tracing the bandage. A tiny, almost silent sound escaped her lips. At first, Arthur thought he was imagining it, but then it came again, a little louder this time. It was a giggle, a light, airy sound that he hadn't heard in 2 years. The sound of it cut right through the drone of the conference call he had just finished. He opened his office door, ready to tell Clara she could finally go home, but the words died in his throat. The sight before him struck him with the force of a physical impact. There, on the floor, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, was his daughter, laughing. Her head was tilted back, a genuine, joyful smile on her face as Clara tickled the newly repaired elephant's trunk. For Arthur, who had only known a world of muffled grief and heavy silence since his wife's passing, the sound of his daughter's laughter was like the first rain after a long drought. He stood in the doorway, paralyzed by a flood of emotions too powerful to name, tears welling in his deep blue eyes. This intern hadn't just saved his workday, she was mending a world he thought was broken forever. Arthur remained in the doorway, a statue carved from wonder and disbelief, until the soft giggles faded and Lily, exhausted by the sudden rush of joy, yawned. Clara gently scooped her up and carried her to the plush sofa in Arthur's office, where the little girl curled up and fell into a deep sleep, her small hand still clutching the bandaged elephant. Clara quietly draped her own cardigan over Lily like a blanket and began to tidy up their makeshift play area, her movements efficient and soft in the quiet of the empty office. When she returned to Brenda's desk to gather her things, she found Arthur standing there, waiting. The powerful CEO persona had dissolved, replaced by a man who looked both weary and profoundly moved. "Miss Monroe," he began, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "Clara, your work today was exemplary. The way you handled the Harrington account was something else." Clara offered a small, modest smile. "It's all part of the job, Mr. Vance. I'm just happy I could help." "No," Arthur insisted, taking a step closer. The city lights began to sparkle to life in the massive window behind him, framing him. "What you did with Lily?" He paused, swallowing hard, struggling with the unfamiliar weight of vulnerability. "I haven't heard her laugh. Not like that. Not since her mother passed away." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Clara's empathetic gaze never wavered. She didn't offer pity, only a simple, powerful understanding. "She's an amazing little girl," Clara said gently. "She just needed a teammate." Just then, Arthur's phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced down at the screen. It was a text from Brenda. "Heard you have the intern holding down the fort. Hope she isn't in over her head. Let me know if I need to walk her through anything remotely." A flicker of annoyance crossed Arthur's face. The message, cloaked in concern, felt a subtle challenge, a reminder of Brenda's perceived indispensability. He quickly dismissed the notification, his focus returning to the woman in front of him who had done more for his family in 8 hours than he thought possible. "You've done more than enough," he said, his voice firm with conviction. "It's late. The subways will be packed. Let me drive you home." It wasn't a question from a boss to an employee. It was a personal request, an offer to extend the quiet bubble of understanding that had formed around them. Clara looked from Arthur's sincere face to the sleeping form of Lily in the other room. Her day, which had started with a crisis, was ending with an unexpected connection. "Okay, Mr. Vance," she accepted softly. "I'd appreciate that." In the silent, starlit office, the formal lines between them had irrevocably blurred, replaced by the quiet promise of something new. The drive through the city's glittering canyons was quiet. Arthur's luxury sedan moved with a silent grace, a stark contrast to the rattling subway Clara was used to. In the back seat, Lily slept soundly, buckled into her booster seat, which Arthur had retrieved from his car. a familiar anchor in this day of upheaval. The silence wasn't awkward, it was comfortable, filled with the unspoken emotions of the evening. It was Clara who finally spoke, her voice soft as she watched the city lights blur past. "My mom was a nurse," she said, seemingly out of nowhere. "She worked the night shift. When I was little, I'd sometimes get these awful nightmares. She taught me a trick. She'd say, 'Clara, just focus on one good thing that happened today. Hold on to it like an anchor.' It always worked." Arthur glanced at her, his hands steady on the steering wheel. The streetlights illuminated the thoughtful expression on his face. "One good thing," he repeated quietly, more to himself than to her. "For a long time, the best I could hope for was just getting through the day, making sure Lily ate, that her homework was done, just surviving." "You were her anchor," Clara replied gently, "and that's everything." His grip tightened on the wheel. "Today," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "today, the good thing was the sound of my daughter's laughter. I didn't realize how much I had missed it until I heard it again. Thank you for giving that back to me, Clara." The sincerity in his voice was a powerful current flowing between them. It was a moment of profound, unguarded connection, far removed from the corporate hierarchy that was supposed to define their relationship. They pulled up in front of Clara's modest apartment building, a world away from the gleaming skyscrapers of downtown. "You know," Arthur said, turning to face her fully as he parked the car, "Brenda will likely be out for a few weeks. The board is already nervous about this acquisition. Having Lily at the office, it's not ideal, but it's my only option." He paused, his blue eyes searching hers. "What I'm trying to say is, I need you, not just as an intern who can answer phones. I need you, Clara, your chaos management." A small, tired smile touched his lips. "I'll double your intern pay, triple it, whatever it takes." Clara looked from his earnest face to the sleeping child in the back and thought of her tiny apartment and student loans. But the decision wasn't about the money. It was about the feeling of being essential, of mending something beautiful that had been broken. "I'll be there, Mr. Vance," she said, her voice full of a resolve that matched his. "You don't have to triple my pay. Just keep the coffee machine stocked." For the first time that day, a genuine, warm smile spread across Arthur's face, reaching his eyes and erasing some of the weariness that lived there. The next few days settled into a surprising rhythm. The sterile reception area outside Arthur's office transformed into a place of quiet warmth. Their mornings began not with stress, but with a secret handshake Clara had invented for the CEO and the chief of supplies. Lily, now equipped with her own set of blunt-edged scissors and colored paper, would sit beside Clara, diligently preparing documents, while Clara fielded calls and managed Arthur's impossibly complex schedule. The drawings Lily made were no longer of withered flowers. They were now filled with smiling suns and stick figures of a man, a woman, and a little girl holding hands. Arthur found himself deliberately leaving his office door ajar, the low murmur of their playful collaboration a soothing counterpoint to the tense negotiations crackling through his earpiece. He started bringing 3 cups of coffee in the morning instead of 1, placing a small hot chocolate with extra marshmallows on the corner of the desk for Lily. These small, unspoken gestures became the foundation of their new reality, a fragile ecosystem of trust and burgeoning affection. Meanwhile, miles away, Brenda Thorne was recovering. From her immaculate bedroom, she navigated a different network, the company's web of gossip disseminated through group chats with other executive assistants. When she learned of the upcoming make-or-break meeting with Mr. Sterling, a notoriously difficult investor crucial to the acquisition, she saw her opening. She crafted an email to Clara, dripping with false sincerity. "Hi, Clara. Heard from the girls about the big Sterling meeting. Congrats on landing that. A little tip from my years of experience, he absolutely despises any mention of international expansion in a first pitch, thinks it's unfocused, sticks strictly to domestic growth. Just a little something to help you shine. Best, Brenda. Clara read the email and felt a flicker of gratitude. The advice seemed invaluable, but something in its overly helpful tone felt wrong. That evening, in her small apartment, long after putting Lily to bed in her own room, which she had prepared for her, she decided to do her own research. Fueled by coffee, she scoured years of interviews, shareholder reports, and articles on Sterling. And then she found it. A keynote speech from 6 months prior, where Sterling explicitly stated, "Any company not built for the global stage from day one is a company built to fail." The screen's cold light illuminated the truth. Brenda's email wasn't a tip, it was a landmine. It was a carefully crafted piece of sabotage designed to make her fail in the most spectacular way possible, humiliating her and proving to Arthur that his trust was misplaced. A chill ran down Clara's spine. This wasn't just about filling in for a sick colleague anymore. She was in a battle she didn't even know she was fighting. She looked at Brenda's email one last time, her soft, empathetic features hardening into a mask of quiet, steely resolve. She wasn't just protecting a job now, she was protecting Arthur. The morning of the Sterling meeting arrived, thick with an almost electric tension. Arthur was a caged lion, pacing his office as he rehearsed his opening remarks. He had placed his complete trust in Clara to prepare the final presentation deck, a trust that now felt like a lead weight in his stomach. He was betting his company on an intern. Clara entered his office, holding a tablet with the final presentation. She looked calm, her gaze steady, betraying none of the late-night revelation. "The presentation is ready, Mr. Vance," she said, her voice even. "I've loaded it onto the conference room monitor." "Did you incorporate the final data from the analytics team?" he asked, his tone sharp with stress. "I did. And I also took the liberty of making a few adjustments based on my own research into Mr. Sterling's recent investment patterns. I believe I found a more compelling angle." Arthur's eyes narrowed. "Adjustments? Clara, this is not the time for creative liberties. We had a strategy." "I understand, but our strategy was based on the assumption that he's a domestic-focused investor. He's not. Not anymore. His entire philosophy has shifted. He wants a global vision from day one." Arthur stared at her, a conflict raging within him. Everything he knew about Sterling, all the institutional knowledge passed down from Brenda and his team, pointed in the opposite direction. Yet the quiet confidence in Clara's eyes, the meticulous way she had handled every other crisis, urged him to trust her. It was a leap of faith, a choice between years of established procedure and a few days of undeniable results. The tic-tac of the roulage was almost insurgible. "All right," he said, finally, the word costing him more than any multi-million-dollar decision he'd ever made. "We'll do it your way." In the boardroom, Mr. Sterling, a stern man with eyes that missed nothing, sat with his arms crossed, radiating impatience. Arthur began the presentation, his voice steady but his heart hammering against his ribs. When he reached the pivotal slide, he paused and looked at Clara, who gave him a subtle, reassuring nod. "And while our domestic growth projections are robust, they are merely the foundation. The true potential of this merger lies in our 3-phase plan for immediate global expansion, starting with the Asian markets in Q1. A silence fell over the room. Mr. Sterling leaned forward, the icy expression on his face cracking. For the first time, a flicker of genuine interest appeared in his eyes. "Go on," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You have my attention." Arthur's gaze met Clara's across the long, polished table. In her eyes, he saw not the relief of a subordinate, but the quiet triumph of a partner. The moment the boardroom door clicked shut behind Mr. Sterling and his team, the crushing tension in the room evaporated. Arthur let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for a week. He was giddy with relief, buzzing with the adrenaline of a battle won. He turned to Clara, his professional composure melting away to reveal the raw gratitude beneath. "Clara," he said, his voice brimming with an admiration that went far beyond that of a boss. "You didn't just save the meeting, you saved the entire acquisition. You may have just saved this company." "We saved it," she corrected softly, a genuine smile lighting up her features. It was a team effort. The way she said "we" resonated deep within him. In that moment, she wasn't an intern, a subordinate, or a temporary fix. She was his partner, his equal. But the victory was tainted by the knowledge of how close they had come to disaster. The malice of Brenda's email was a poison that needed to be drawn out. Back in his office, he looked at Clara, his expression hardening. "There's one more call I need to make," he said, his voice grim, "and I want you to be here for it." He pulled out his phone, found Brenda's number, and pressed the speaker button. It rang twice before she answered, her voice syrupy sweet. "Arthur, I was just thinking about you. How did the big meeting go? I hope the intern managed not to embarrass you too much." Brenda purred, her confidence sickeningly clear. "The meeting went perfectly, Brenda. And Clara was exceptional, especially since she was smart enough to do her own research instead of relying on your tip." A beat of silence. "What do you mean?" Brenda asked, her voice losing its sweetness. "I mean," Arthur continued, his words sharp as daggers, "that Clara pitched a global expansion strategy and Sterling loved it. In fact, he mentioned that a domestic-only pitch would have been an insult to his intelligence. Funny, isn't it?" The silence on the other end of the line was heavy and damning. When Brenda finally spoke, her voice was no longer smooth and professional. It was a raw, cracking shriek of pure, undiluted envy. 15 years! I gave you 15 years of my life. I was the one who knew how you took your coffee, the names of your investors, the anniversary of your wife's death. And she, that girl, she waltzes in, and in 1 week, she's in the boardroom, playing with your daughter, taking my place? She didn't just take my desk, Arthur. She took my life, the life that I earned." The confession, ugly and desperate, exposed the bitter rot of resentment that had festered for years. Arthur listened, his face a mask of disgust and disappointment. When she was finished, her ragged breaths echoing through the speaker, he made his decision. "We're done, Brenda. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Security will courier your personal effects." He ended the call without waiting for a reply, plunging the office into a sudden, profound silence. He looked at Clara, the ugliness of the confrontation hanging between them, an ordeal they had weathered together. The last barrier between them had just been obliterated. The deafening silence that followed the phone call was heavier than any argument could ever be. The ugly confrontation had sucked the air out of the room, leaving only the raw, undeniable connection between the two people who had weathered it together. Arthur looked at Clara, not as an intern, but as the only person who had seen him through a storm he didn't even know was raging. The professional pretense was gone, leaving something far more real and terrifying in its place. I owe you more than a thank you," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "Let me make you dinner tonight, a proper one, not in a restaurant, but at my home. Lily would love it." The invitation was simple, but its weight was immense. It was an invitation, not just to a meal, but into their lives. "I'd love that," Clara replied softly, her own heart beating a steady rhythm against the frantic pace of the day. Arthur's home was nothing like his office. Where the office was glass and steel, his house was warm wood and soft fabrics. Family photos lined the hallways, ghosts of a happy past that he was trying to rebuild. The air smelled of home-cooked food, a scent Clara realized he had orchestrated just for her. After a cheerful dinner, where Lily proudly showed off her new drawing skills to Clara, the little girl's energy finally waned. She crawled onto the sofa, laid her head in Clara's lap, and fell into a deep, trusting sleep, her hand curled around Clara's fingers. The picture of them was one of perfect, peaceful domesticity. Arthur watched them from an armchair across the room, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. He made no move to wipe it away. "For 2 years," he began, his voice a raw, broken whisper, "this house has been a museum, silent. We didn't live here, we just existed. I thought my only job was to carry Lily through the grief. I never let myself believe that someone could come in and turn the lights back on." He got up and knelt in front of Clara and his sleeping daughter, his gaze intense and full of a vulnerable, aching gratitude. He gently reached out, his fingers brushing a stray strand of hair from Clara's face. "You didn't just organize my schedule, Clara. You pieced my family back together. You gave my daughter back her laughter, and you gave me back my hope." His voice cracked on the last word. Tears welled in Clara's own eyes as she looked at this powerful man brought to his knees by the simple power of love and healing. "I only came here for an internship, Arthur, but I think I've found a home." He leaned in, his movements slow and deliberate, and captured her lips in a kiss. It wasn't a kiss of sudden passion, but of profound, soul-deep recognition. It was a promise of a new beginning, sealed in the quiet of a healing home, with the living proof of their bond sleeping peacefully between them. 6 months later, the sun shone brightly on a small, elegant garden, a world away from the glass and steel of the city. There was no boardroom, no conference calls, only the soft murmur of close friends and the scent of blooming roses. Arthur stood at a small altar, but the man he was now bore little resemblance to the stressed-out CEO of half a year ago. The weariness in his eyes had been replaced by a deep, steady light of pure joy. Clara walked down the aisle, not in a power suit, but in a simple, elegant white dress. Her smile was radiant, a beacon of the warmth that had healed them all. But the true testament to the miracle she had wrought was the little girl skipping ahead of her, scattering rose petals. Lily was no longer a silent shadow. She was a vibrant splash of color. Her laughter, once a forgotten sound, now the day's bright music. On a front-row chair, propped up carefully, sat Mr. Patches the elephant, wearing a tiny, crooked bow tie. When Clara joined Arthur at the altar, he took her hands, his voice clear and strong as he spoke his vows. "They say a CEO's greatest asset is his vision," he began, his blue eyes locked on hers. "But I was blind. I could see profit margins and market shares, but I couldn't see the emptiness in my own home. You didn't just teach me how to love again, Clara. You taught me how to live again. You rebuilt my family, and in doing so, you inspired me to build a better company, one that values empathy as much as efficiency." When it was her turn, Clara's voice was thick with happy tears. "I came to your office looking for a career, but I found my entire world. You and Lily gave me a love I never knew I was searching for." Later, as the small reception began, Lily ran up to them, throwing her arms around Clara's waist. She looked up, her blue eyes, now always bright, shining with love. "Can we go home now, Mom?" she asked, the words simple, natural, and yet holding the power of a universe reborn. Arthur scooped Lily into his arms as Clara hugged them both, her face buried in her new husband's shoulder. He looked over Lily's head at his wife, his partner, the woman who had walked into a crisis and created a family. The acquisition had been a success. His company was thriving, but none of that mattered as much as this. This was the real merger, the only one that had ever truly counted. As the sun set, the new family of 3 stood together, a complete and perfect picture of a world mended not by power or strategy, but by the quiet, unyielding courage of a kind and loving heart. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please tell us how you rate it from 0 to 10. Hey, subscribe to be notified when we release new stories. Click the like button and share with anyone you think might also like it. See you next time.